How does the human population discover that a butthole can be used for sexual purposes?
Is purely an emotional connection with someone enough, or do you need anal sex?
Maybe you shouldn't put something where shit is coming out of.
Hi everyone, I'm Peter and this is Tekky.
Every week, I will choose a topic or question inspired by my ADHD thoughts and look to Peter for the question. Also, Peter has no idea what this is going to be.
So, what is today's surprise topic, Mr. Mystery Man?
So, I don't even know how I came up with this one, but it was an ADHD thought, it really was.
Surprise.
And this week's topic, or today's topic, is, are buttholes supposed to be used for sex? Can you repeat the question?
Buttholes
Yes?
supposed to be used for sex?
Yes, okay. So buttholes on one hand, shit comes out of it, which would indicate it smells, and it's usually the exit point for things. That would tell you, normally, don't put something up there. On the other side though, the male G-spot can be accessed from there, and it's incredibly pleasurable and feels really good. So that would suggest you should put something up there. So how do we balance these two opposing perspectives? I know that's like, people have anal sex and that's what we do from a society perspective, but are they actually supposed to be used for sex? Or is this like a human evolution that we've kind of just started doing?
How about you tell me why this came up? Why is this topic important to you?
Because
was this again, you were sitting on the toilet and it came to you as something was coming out?
I think it actually was. I think that's how I came up with the topic. But why is it important to me? Because as a gay person, we do use buttholes for sexual purposes. And it's like, it's very common, very normal. But then at the same time, when you're taking a dump, you're like, there's shit coming out of it. But then the gay community has developed this whole process, douching, to like prepare your butthole for it to have sex. Some people don't douche, different topic, not my concern today. My concern is whether it should we be using it for that?
Well, depends on who you ask. For instance, there are some people who have more sensitive buttholes and are more prone to hemorrhoids, or what's the other word for them? Prions? No, not prions. Hemorrhoids, which are when your vein
blood vessels enlarge in your butt
and
or
then,
something.
Yes, which can occur due to overstimulation of the area, such as
you can say it.
Taking a big dump, or something big coming in.
Okay, this is educative show only, so you can say the word anal sex.
That can happen to some people, and doctors would say, and reasonable to say, that that person should not have anal sex because they are prone to other complications. Hemorrhoids are not fun, people.
Is this a
also, I hear.
Is this a is this a case of where the risk outweigh the benefits, right, for that individual, which is why doctors will advise, correct?
Yes. For instance, if someone is, I forgot what that term is. What's the term where they, if they get any like illness, they're like super prone to departing? Immunocompromised.
Immunocompromised, yes.
Immunocompromised, where anal sex you can contract. Actually, I don't know if STDs count as immunocompromised and can kill you. But in that case, if there was someone who was immunocompromised and STDs could affect you, there is a big argument against it. But also you could just use like protection. But also it can still go through protection. It's not 100%.
Okay, yes.
So those are the circumstances where it probably is not great.
It should not have great. But if we're talking for the general population, is it okay? How How does the human population discover that a butthole can be used for sexual purposes?
Actually, the earliest cases for it is, well, a few like caveman drawings. But other than that, it's like Mesopotamia period, like 4,000 years ago. There are some, I think it's jars or some sort of sculptures depicting anal sex.
Sure. So
And
it's been
also
happening
the
for a while.
Aboriginals, who are the indigenous Australians. I don't think they participated in it, but they had drawings of two male colleagues engaging in mutual masturbation, meaning anal sex isn't like a prerequisite of gay or gay-friendly relationships. It's just a side thing. It's not that if you're gay, you have to do it. It's just, it's like unrelated.
Sure. I think where my head goes is, on one hand, this is the dilemma, not necessarily a dilemma, I don't have a dilemma, but the thought I had is, shit comes out of your ass versus, is it true that the male G-spot is in the butt? So on one hand, it's like, maybe you shouldn't put something where shit is coming out of, but on the other side, it's like, oh, apparently you can get immense pleasure from it, which obviously enough people do, that's why anal sex is a thing. So how does that weigh? For example, like animals, I don't think animals are having anal sex, not to my knowledge, right?
This is like saying eating sugar tastes really good, but if you eat too much of it, it can be bad. But you still do it, right?
Yes.
It's about, I understand what you mean by the large intestine can be very dirty. It is very dirty, can get very, it's not healthy. But it also can feel pleasurable depending on the person because of the prostate. The prostate is something related to the semen gland that creates, to help create or pump semen or something. And it just happens to be there, right? Because where else is it going to be? Like,
Okay,
it's not going to
yes, that
be
makes
in
sense.
your like head, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be next to the thing that produces it. And it just happens to be there. The reason it feels good to some people is, I have no idea. I think it's just depending on the person. It feels, because not everyone enjoys anal sex. Not everyone enjoys, or it can't even feel the prostate. It's a very select few, right? Yeah.
And that means, I
What's
guess,
your other question?
that leads me to my next question then. Do men have more enjoyment from anal sex than females?
Hey guys, if you're enjoying our content, the best way you can support us is by subscribing.
This helps us make better videos for all of you.
Woo! If like we're talking about like traditional
Sex,
male-female girls don't have a prostate.
sex is not just physical, it's also psychological, right?
Yes.
Because good sex is when everything kind of lines up for you. Like the emotions are there, the psychology is there, and the physical is there.
Yes.
So it's not just one thing.
Yes.
Maybe it might feel good physically, but if you don't feel good psychologically, it won't be good. It literally doesn't matter. You might be one of the lucky few that can get real enjoyment from the but if you just don't enjoy anal sex at all, it's not going to work out for you. You're just not going to, if you don't enjoy the feeling, if you feel
Psychologically?
discomfort. Yes, like you just don't want to put anything up there.
Sure. So
it's like, for instance, abstaining from pork. It can taste good, but if it's against your religion and you feel really bad for eating it,
sure.
It's not going to increase you're not going to do it because there's no enjoyment. You feel really guilty.
Actually, I think, yeah, it's like, I feel like this is one of those topics where there is no clear answer. It falls in the same bucket of like, should you eat meat or should you not? Maybe in terms of there are people who do it, there are people who don't, and you're going to have arguments on both sides.
It's very similar, I think. In a way, it's still considered like a sex taboo, especially for straight couples.
Yes, for sure.
Right? For gay community, it's pretty normal, but it's still considered a sex taboo for straight couples, and you usually only ever do it with someone you trust a lot.
Yes.
Like your very long partner, usually not casual flings.
Yes. But I think my one argument for it is like, what's the what's the detriment to society, which may be, I don't know, greater transmission of STDs? I'm not sure what the transmission rate, like for vaginal sex versus anal sex is, whether it's more.
Yeah, well, depending on, if you just say like gay males, if they didn't do anal sex, then there would probably be less STDs because there's less opportunities for it to spread. For instance, a lot of the times STD spread is through like blood contact. If you're doing anal, there's a higher likelihood of damage in that very sensitive, thin-walled area, which can cause transmission. And if you don't do it, then there's obviously less likelihood of transmitting those kinds of diseases.
But I'm assuming that this is the same with like vaginal sex as well, right? Straight sex is also prone to STD transfer.
Yes, although I am unsure, but I believe the vaginal wall, I would expect it to be thicker and more prepared for that kind of thing because it's literally built for penetration.
Sure.
Whereas the anus is not built for penetration. That's the issue.
Yeah. So I think good point. It doesn't rule it out for me because I think it comes back to similar to what you said about sugar and diabetes. It's like anal sex maybe can lead to greater transmission of STDs, but eating sugar can lead to diabetes, like very known cause. So all these things lead to health problems. It's like, who is the health problem for? And probably for the individual. So it's probably an individual choice whether to do it or not, rather than there being a clear answer as whether you should or should not.
Yes, like in the past, there have been societies that discourage it. Some theories are that discouraging it means you're encouraging vaginal sex to encourage more babies, which is good.
That makes sense.
In general for the community or for humans or for wherever you live. And you discourage things that don't get you there. It's not even usually sex related. It's mostly sex related, but that's usually why things that are sex are taboo. Back to that topic, taboo because it doesn't align politically or with whatever that person's agenda is.
Sure, yes. Interesting. I never thought of it from that perspective, that these cultural norms are often politically motivated, for example, for population growth.
And then you just make stories about it and you spread the stories, propaganda, and people will believe it eventually. Because back then they did not have access to information. Well, even now there's propaganda that's very hard to distinguish and can trick people still. So that's still not any easier with the internet, but yeah. The anus is also, the reason why it feels good, again, is the proximity to the prostate for many people, but also because there's a lot of it's a very sensitive area. There's a lot of nerves because your anus needs to be able to determine if it's solid, liquid, or gas coming through, and be able to react to it. And with sex, things that are sensitive are usually enjoyed. For instance, other parts areas can be like the nipple. A lot of people enjoy nipple. Nipples aren't used, they're not produced for sex, right?
Interesting.
They're not a sexual organ.
Yes.
They're just sensitive. Under the armpits, or maybe, depending on the person, underneath your like leg or like inner thigh, your side areas here. The neck, very, very depends on person. Ear.
Yes.
None of those are specifically made for sex, but because they're sensitive, people can feel a heightened sense of feeling, I guess. I don't know how to describe it.
Which probably links to pleasure and what you said before about sex not just being physical, but emotional, psychological, and the connection there. Yeah.
And the psychology part behind it, apart from anal sex being used as a weapon, for instance, a man, it's known that straight men or men use anal rape as a form of domination over another man because of the psychology behind it.
What do you mean? As in like forced sex? Are we talking about
rape.
like two straight people?
Yes.
Interesting.
As a form of assault.
To show what
domination.
For what purpose?
You are lesser because you have been penetrated.
Sure. Is this a common thing?
That's usually what rape I think probably like a solid half of the time, that's what rape is. It's the
Really?
feeling of dominance of one person over the other because they're lesser. Like they're
Okay.
powerless.
So not necessarily that anal sex rape is more common, but more just
Well,
rape
it's
is about domination.
yeah.
Is that your
and
point?
you can only anal rape another man. You can't vaginal rape him because he doesn't have a vagina. In
Sure.
women, they'll probably be vaginal raped, but in a man, the only hole they have down there is.
Okay, understand.
So does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
No, I'm lost.
That's the psychology behind anal rape, which is another part of anal sex. As in why people do it.
Oh, okay. Another reason for why people might participate in anal sex.
Yes, even if they're not gay, or even if they're not doing it with their sexual preference partner.
But is it fair to say that's a very, very small percentage of the population for which anal sex occurs?
Let me put it to you this way. Most people would agree that if they were penetrated anally, you would feel like you're in a position of submission. Just in general. You would feel that if you're being penetrated, it's more of a submissive feeling that comes out from you rather than a domination feeling.
But isn't that the same with vaginal sex?
Yes, but we're talking about anal sex.
Correct, yes.
And guys don't have vaginas. So
Yes,
this is the
understand.
only way to.
Yeah, I understand.
yeah.
I just don't understand where the point is going.
The point is, receiving end of anal sex, you're more submissive, right?
Yes?
Which plays into the psychology of the rape, but also, I forgot what your original question was. I don't remember what your original question
You were
was.
talking about the reasons that people have anal sex, and then somehow you brought up this
Yes.
domination thing, which is where I got very lost.
Yeah. I think the idea is that sex is psychological, and there's a psychological nature behind anal sex.
Yes.
The submissive and the domination thing. One of the biggest evidences of being receiving end is very submissive is, even if you disagree, like I think it's very fact driven.
No,
that
I
if
don't
you're
disagree. I
receiving
just don't understand
is
the point.
The psychology is very important behind sex.
Yes, correct.
And that's one of the reasons why anal sex is popular. It's the psychology behind it, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. I think the point that you're making is...
There is a psychological component behind anal sex that makes it popular.
Yep, and a big part of sex is
Yes,
psychology
you're
and emotion, not just physical.
The original question is anuses supposed to be used as
For sex.
Yes.
Yes.
And again, the physical, I've explained the physical. You have more sensitive nerves, it's near your prostate.
Yes.
The psychological, when you're on the receiving end, you're more sensitive, you're more submissive, which can be psychological for you. That
Sure.
can turn some people on. If you're doing the penetration, there's the domination side of it. Also the physical side, it's a tight area, which is pleasurable to the person who's topping,
Sure.
who's on top.
Yeah.
So that's the physical and the psychological nature of anal sex that people can enjoy.
Sure, makes sense. I think what I'm hearing is that I guess humans are one of the only or very few species that have sex not just for reproductive purposes, but for enjoyment. So I think everything that you've said about different areas being sensitive for like sexual enjoyment, for example, nipple, armpits, all ties into the idea that we're doing it for recreational joy. So I think this is just part of an extension of that, broadly speaking. Yeah. I understand what you're saying now. I just didn't understand why the rape thing really threw me off. Well, the psychological aspect, well, when I think about sex and what good sex looks like, it's not just physical. There's also an emotional component and a psychological component to it. And it's about connection. So when I think about the psychological component of anal sex, I think it's related to that. For someone to be inside you or for you to be inside someone, apart from the physical element, I think there's a very big psychological element where you literally and figuratively, you feel very close to them.
Oh yes. Apart from like cuddling in bed, right? This is as literally as intertwined together
As you can be.
as you can be. I think the nearest closest is like tongue kissing. It's probably
yes,
the
yes.
next closest that is a
Yes.
common thing people do.
Yes. So you're really close to someone, like one of you is inside the other. So you're psychologically, you feel this sense of closeness as well, right? And connection.
Mm.
So I think when we think about sex from that perspective, then anal sex is just an extension of that. The desire to be really close with someone, aside from just the physical.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it comes down to human connection, desire for human connection.
And human connection is actually, it's more emotional based, right?
Yeah, so I remember I read somewhere that someone did a crazy experiment where there were some babies, and then they didn't give the babies any care and love. And then those babies ended up dying. They can't do those experiments anymore because it's not very moral. But that experiment kind of showed the necessity and how essential human connection is. So if I think about the psychological aspect of anal sex or sex generally, I think it stems from the need for human connection.
I think that one is more. I think the example you gave is definitely connection, but I think the anal sex is more intimacy.
Yeah,
like
but
human intimacy. Because
the core thing at the end of the day is a desire for human connection, or a need for human connection.
a human relationship, a relationship with someone else, right?
Or not just a relationship, but connection, care. So in the baby scenario, the babies needed to feel care, feel connected with people in order to survive.
Like emotionally
and thrive.
connect, yes.
Yes, like someone cares for me, rather than just having food and literally died from it. So it's the same. I think that same base need needed for survival is what extends into the need for connection, even from a sexual perspective.
Are we talking specifically about anal sex as being a need? Is that what you're trying to say? Or you mean like why sex is important? What are you trying
I think
to...
the question before was we're talking about anal sex and the physical aspect of it, why it feels good, and then the psychological aspect, why it psychologically feels good. And I think it's rooted in this idea of human connection, desire for human connection.
As in, is this specifically to anal sex or is it just sex in general? As in...
I don't think it's specific to anal sex, actually.
Okay.
Yes, it's to sex in general.
Yes. Or
And
even...
it's two guys, obviously most cases you're not going to have a vagina. To be one person be inside of the other to feel that sense of closeness. So what's the next possible thing? It might be oral sex, but anal sex is one of the options as well. Yeah, that's what I think.
What about like just a pure emotional connection? Are you saying that anal sex is necessary?
Not necessary, and again, it's going to differ by person to person. But I think I'm talking about the people who enjoy it.
Because I think from what I was understanding when you were talking about why the emotional is so important, and it's the exact same as babies, it was connected to babies needing connection, otherwise they die. It sounded like you were trying to say anal sex is if you don't get it, you die. That's what it sounded like to me. And I was like, I'm just clarifying.
Which I'm glad you did, and that's not what I meant.
That's why I was just like, do you mean just anal sex is just another example of human connection that human connection can exhibit in the form of anal sex, and maybe that is one of the reasons why it's so important to people.
Yes.
Side tangent, could you live the rest of your life without anal sex then? Or would you die?
I think I could live, but you can also live with the rest of your life without vaginal sex.
I definitely can live the rest of my life without vaginal sex. Good eye. Good job. Wow.
So what's the point of this question?
It's just a side tangent.
Okay.
So would you say, because I'm going on the emotional side, because you're talking about the emotional
yes.
part of the human connection, is purely an emotional connection with someone enough? Or do you need the anal sex? component. Maybe let's just start with you personally, and then we can expand.
No,
But
I
you personally.
feel like I could have a purely emotional connection with someone, and that could be enough. So long as, like, again, if you think about, this is such a huge side tangent, but like relationships as a whole, and you connect with a person on multiple points, right? Might be emotional, physical, sexual, blah, 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 a whole variety of things. If one point of connection is stronger, I think that can compensate for the other points. So if the point of emotional connection is strong enough, then I don't necessarily need like sexual or anal connection. Does that make sense? But how does this tie back to my original question of shit comes out of the ass, bad, prostate in ass, good. So how does that weigh up?
What do you mean, how does that weigh up? What does that even mean? What kind of question is that?
The two are in opposition.
So what do you think? After everything that we've discussed.
I think it comes back to the point that humans have sex, one of the only species or one of the only species to have sex for pleasure rather than just reproductive purposes. And humans, at the end of the day, we seek pleasure. So biologically, it's hard. Biologically, we're wired to seek pleasure, right? So there's an argument that biologically, anal sex makes sense because it provides pleasure. To the people who do it, it provides pleasure. Otherwise, there'd be no reason that they would do it, right? But from the other perspective, the shit coming out of the ass, it's an exit point. Biologically, you shouldn't be using it for that. But just because you shouldn't necessarily do something, no. What do people usually say? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. What's the opposite of that? Just because you aren't supposed to necessarily do something doesn't mean you shouldn't. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think humans are there to enjoy life. And like you said, the example that you gave around like armpits, nipples, the neck, there are different areas of sensitivity that aren't necessarily designed to be used for sexual purposes, but a lot of people still like stimulate them during foreplay and things like that. So I think it makes sense why anal sex exists. Like for me now, before I was really confused. I was like, these two are in opposition, but it kind of makes sense now, or it does make sense that humans are pleasure-seeking creatures. That is that's very biologically ingrained in us. So from that perspective, yeah, hell yeah, go have anal sex. Go have good sex, people. And that, to conclude, yes, buttholes can be used for anal sex.
And there is nothing to be ashamed of.
Whether you want to do it or not, again, people vary so greatly in whether they get pleasure from something or not, whether how their body is set up. So if it works for you, go do it. Have more anal sex, people. That's my conclusion.
It reduces prostate cancer.
Oh, really?
Yes, sex and masturbation reduces prostate cancer.
Damn, go have more anal sex. Is it just sex generally?
Yeah, just
Okay.
ejaculating.
It's not just. Go have more sex, people.
Go have more anal sex.
Have sex, save lives. So thank you, Professor Peter. Today has very much assisted in my formulation of an opinion that makes sense to me based on the random thought that I had on the toilet. So I would like to award you with the Tekky Peace Prize.
Fist bump.
No, it's handshake.
High five.
Actually, what was your thoughts today when I asked you about this question? What was your initial reaction?
You have really weird toilet thoughts.
Some of them aren't on the toilets. Some of them are in the shower or just lying in bed at night.
That one was a toilet thought. I can tell.
Was that just your reaction?
I can
It's
tell
really
the quality.
weird.
I could smell it a mile away.
Because it was shit related. If you have any topic suggestions, leave them in the comments below. If I find it interesting, I will ask Peter and he'll give us that face where he's like, what the hell, who came up with this question? Anyway, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us. Bye!
Thanks for watching to the end of this video, guys. We hope you enjoyed it. He forgot his line. If there's anything you guys want us to talk about, please leave it in the comments
It's too
below.
long, I'm not gonna-